Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing Eileen, written by Ottessa Moshfegh. She's not one of my favourite authors of all time, but she's such an intriguing author because everything she writes is very different. Not different from each other, because all the books I've read so far, this is the third book I've read from this author, they're all quite dark. They all focus on a main narrator, and the main character is always the narrator in the books, for the books I've read so far. And the characters are always written in a way that they're unlikable. Not all the time, but they're very hard to like. And they're very strange. They've got a lot of strange things in their makeup, in how they're developed as a character. She's so unique from other authors out there. And maybe I need to see if I can find authors that some people think match her tone and voice in her books. Maybe I'll try that. But for me, Moshfegh is a very unique voice. And she feels like an author that writes what she wants to write. She wants to write a good tale, and she writes it very well. But doesn't seem like she comes across as somebody who really cares what people think about her books. And her books are very polarizing, and this one I think would be as well. People seem to either really dislike the books or really enjoy them. You don't get a lot of people who sit on the fence. I haven't seen that anyway with this author's books. But I enjoyed this story. It's got another character that's very dark, very hard to like, but the way it's written, it plays out quite well and in a very controlled way. And it does have some twists and turns towards the end of the book. You have to get through a lot of the book to get there first, but getting to that part is very interesting because you learn so much about the main character. You learn what makes her tick and why, and you delve so deeply into her persona. Eileen is our main character and narrator. She's full of self-loathing. She just doesn't like herself, and she doesn't like the world in general, it seems. And it's all because of her circumstance, of her home environment, of her lack of nurturing, I guess, in a way, from her parents, because we learn more about her life as we progress through this story, through her memories, and we just see little snippets. But also her father's still alive. Her father was a police officer. He's retired now. He's forced off the force because of his drinking, and he just is very emotionally and psychologically abusive towards Eileen. And it seems like he has been for quite some time. And it seems like he gets a kick out of it. He doesn't mind what he's doing, the way he's treating Eileen. And Eileen's got a sister who lives out of home. And her father loves the sister. Whenever the sister visits, it's a different story. So he treats them differently. And he really oppresses Eileen. And you just get a sense that Eileen is just a victim of the way she's been treated for many, many years. And what we do know about Eileen is that she feels more comfortable in feeling mistreated. She feels more comfortable in looking at the darker side of life, the underbelly of life, and reading about those subjects, darker subjects. And she's not someone who enjoys vibrancy really in life. She likes things muted, and she thinks of herself as being plain, as being unhealthy, as being unlikable, I think, in a way. She thinks of herself as more of a spectator to life. And even when she sees something that gives her a bit of a boost, that she thinks, she would enjoy, it's from a distance. And she treats people with a distance as well. She's very cold to them. And she always talks about having this corpse face, or this face she presents to the world that's very stoic, that never smiles, that just looks at the world through a lens of kind of doom and gloom. And she's proud of that because she thinks that nobody can really see what she feels. They won't see how they make her feel, how she reacts to them, because she has this mask on, this death mask face, I think she calls it. And it's intriguing to see a character who is so full of self-loathing and so full of self-hate, but it's also a preserving mechanism. So that's strange because she's keeping herself safe, I guess, from what she thinks the world thinks of her by making herself feel this way as well. So it's an interesting mix to this character, and just the whole makeup of this character really engaged me. It doesn't mean that I think the character is always likable. I mean, she's not likable really at all. Certain parts she is, when you empathise with her, and you can't help but empathise with her, but there are many moments when you just think she's not likable. From the start of this book, we're told that we're getting a glimpse into the last week of her life before she runs away from home, before she runs away from everything that she knows. We don't know why yet. We assume it's something big, and we assume we're going to find out about it, but when? And we do find out about it towards the end of the book, and I'm not going to go into what it is. The changes for Eileen come through her workplace. So she works at a boys' prison, and she's working in admin there, but she's also used as the person who kind of manages the prison visits. I'm not really sure, I guess, how she feels about that. I think she just thinks of it as part of her job. She may think it's strange, but I get the sense that she's doing it because there's nobody else on the staff who will do it, basically. During her time at the prison, there are a couple of things in the book. One, she's got a crush on one of the male prison guards in the prison. The way she deals with that is by stalking him. So that's another side to this character, Eileen, that's negative. She's a stalker, and she admits it, and she's happy to do it. And the reason she does it is because that's the way she deals with people. She can't interact with people very much, doesn't know how to. So she's doing this because it's the only way that she knows how to feel a connection with somebody. And I think she realises it's strange. I mean, she's a self-aware character, but she still does it because there's just no other way she can handle these feelings that she has for this guy at the prison. Eileen's life takes a turn because 2 new employees turn up at the prison, and one is a teacher called Rebecca. Rebecca is the opposite to Eileen. She's colourful, vibrant, not shy. She speaks her mind. She's full of life. She seems ready to take on the world. And in the book, Rebecca and Eileen start to become sort of friends, but it's not convincing enough in the story whether they're real friends or not. They just seem to be drawn to each other because they're the only young female people in the workforce in the prison. So that may be why they're drawn together. But Eileen is fixated on Rebecca because she's all the things she's not. And that fixation leads Eileen to agree to things that she may not agree with normally. And that leads her into trouble, I think, in the book. I think this book is well written. It's well structured. I think it's mainly 2 things. It's a character study, a very, very deep and well done character study. But it's also about assumptions and how we let assumptions rule our lives. Not just the assumptions about seeing someone for the first time and assuming who they are and what they're like, but also the assumptions we make about what other people think about us. I think it's about those 2 things as well. It's also about circumstance and how circumstance and our environment shapes us. So I think that plays a big part in the story as well. Even though it's well written and well structured, it's my least favourite book by this author. So I've read 3 books so far by the author, and this is the least favourite, in my opinion anyway. Eileen, our voice and narrator, of course she's the most well-developed character in the story. Even though she has these extremes, they feel real in the story. She feels like a real person. She's definitely a person who's shaped by circumstance, by history, and I wonder if the author's asking us to think about that with Eileen. Do we assume people are who they are because of their environment when they're growing? Can people change? How easy it is for somebody to leave that and reshape themselves, recreate themselves. So it's interesting how that comes about in the book, because we know it's the last week of her time in this environment. What does that mean for her? Because there are parts of the book that are from the voice of who she is later in life. And I don't get a sense that her voice has changed that much from when she's 24, I think, in the last week before she leaves the town to however old she is, I don't think the voice changes that much. So I'm just wondering how much escaping that environment shaped the character in a different way. Rebecca, the teacher who joins the workforce at the prison, she's written as being the opposite to Eileen, basically. And she's like this beacon that Eileen focuses on, like a moth to a flame. And Rebecca is able to use that to kind of draw Eileen into something that could be terrible. So Rebecca is vibrant, loud, outspoken, confident. She's all these things that Eileen's not. And I don't know if Eileen wishes she could be like that, or if she just sees it as something different, something that is a bit more colourful in her life. And I wonder if Eileen sees something in Rebecca that makes her think that Rebecca is a little bit dark as well. Because you just wonder about that, because there are a couple of things that happen when Rebecca is in the story early on, when Rebecca joins the story, that make you wonder about her motives, about who she is. A couple of strange things that happen. So Rebecca's a bit of mystery as well in this book, and she becomes very intriguing because of that. Eileen's father is a big part of this book. I don't think we learn his name in the story, and it's not the first time that we have a nameless character in a book by this author. He's an awful character, basically. You will dislike him. I don't think anybody could like this character. He's an alcoholic, he's abusive emotionally and psychologically, not physically, but he's just a bully, basically, and he seems very, very comfortable with being all those things. He's also paranoid, and that's probably because of his drinking. He carries a gun around still, and he scares neighbourhood kids. He throws snowballs at them all the time, things like that. He's always talking about being spied on by the mafia, about hoodlums, all this sort of thing going on with this character. But he treats Eileen terribly, and it seems like that's been a pattern over many years. So this character is just an awful character, written well in the story though, so even though it's a character I dislike very much, written very well, so a very powerful character in the book, and seems very powerful because he shapes Eileen's behaviours, her actions, just her thinking about herself very much in the story. This book is interesting, and again I think it's polarising. I think people are going to either hate it or like it. I don't think there's a lot of middle ground in this book, and I don't think there's a lot of middle ground with this author at all, really. I rate this a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a well-told story. I thought it's well structured. The characters are very clear, very strong. You dislike a lot of the characters. They're very complex characters as well, and the main character, her voice is very consistent. Just we delve into her so much, what makes her her in the book. I get the impression this author plans her books very much because they're not lengthy. There's not a lot of space for filler. Everything in the book has a purpose. Even terrible things that happen have a purpose. That's what makes these books very interesting. On my channel, I do review books from many genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. I'm sure you'll find something you like.